right, we're going to get started. Yay, us. Woo! My name is Robin Huff, and I am your host for the meeting today. We are thrilled to have all of you here. It's going to be a fabulous meeting. I've got our agenda up here. You can see that we're going to have a welcome. That's what this is. Then we're going to have some introductions. And then we're going to have a little bragging. That's my part. Lanny Chapman is going to introduce the one and the only Sherrie Swensen. We're so happy to have you here today. Woo! What a rock star. What a rock star. We'll have some remarks from Sherrie, and then we're going to talk about some upcoming events. And then we have our wonderful speakers. They're here. It's always a sigh of relief when they show you when the speakers are in the room. Senator Luz Escamillo and Representative Angela Romero. Give them a wave there. Thank you so much. We have a few elected officials with us here today. I want to start with my very own Representative Carol Spackman-Moss. Where did you go, Carol? There she is. Yeah. We have Diane Lewis, who is the chair of the Utah Democratic Party. Diane, would you give it a wave? Do we have any other electeds here? We got anybody? Lanny Chapman, that's right. Salt Lake County Recorder. Oh my. County Clerk. Oh, Sheriff, you made it. Oh, I'm so glad. Sheriff Rivera. Sheriff Rivera is a former recipient of the Women's Democratic Club Woman of the Year Award. So thank you so much for being here. I know it's an effort for you. Thank you very much. Delighted to have you. Have I missed anybody? All right. I want to say that this organization does what it does because we have such an incredible board. And I'm going to do a little introduction of our board here. If you are a member of the board, or if you have been a past member of the board, would you please stand up? Stand up. And yeah, give these people a hand. I'm going to start over here. We've got Dr. Ellen Brady in that corner. We've got Catherine Voté in the back. She's our treasurer. Ellen Brady is our issues director. We've got Sheila right here, Sheila Srivastava. She's our membership director. Dr. Wendy Davis over here, our campaign support director. Lisa Yoder. Lisa is the program director. Everybody needs to go up and say, Lisa, thank you so much for the program today and the food and everything involved in pulling this off. She was here yesterday. We were putting tablecloths, and the one and the only Mitchell Weiss over here. Mitchell, none of this would be here without Mitchell. And back in this corner, we've got Donna Kelly. She is our recorder. And I'm missing Angel. Where's Angel? Directing traffic, as Angel would be. So thank you so much. It's a fabulous board. I'm so honored to have an opportunity to work with them. Because I'm the president, I get to be the bragger in chief. And I want to talk about some things that happened this past year. The first thing on our list was to encourage women to run for public office. Yeah, thanks. We gave scholarships to 10 amazing women who are attending the Political Development Series right now. They're enrolled. And we've got 3 of them with us here today. Kate Miller, would you stand up? Kate Miller back here. Sharon Birkinshaw, would you stand up? And Angie Tarbett. Angie, give us a wave back there. Over the past 4 years, the Women's Democratic Club has scholarshiped 45 women to attend that political development series. And I want you to know that they are running and they are winning. We're talking about Representative Rosemary Lesser, newly elected Representative Sahara Hayes, Councilwoman Ellen Burrell, Salt Lake City Councilwoman Victoria Petro Eschler, West Valley Councilwoman Pamela Bloom. They're getting elected, and if many more are involved now with state and local boards, and they are shaping their communities. Think about it. There are some of you in this room right here who want to fill out this application to attend the political development series this coming fall. We'd love to have you. And because we're women, we pay for childcare and we pay for transportation. Yeah. All right. The next thing on our list, oops, get back there, was to support Democrats running for public office. This past year, under the direction of Dr. Wendy Davis, the Women's Democratic Club endorsed 67 candidates statewide from Moab to Logan. And we funded, thank you, and we funded those campaigns. The Women's Democratic Club has carved out a niche as early money. And early money, you ask any candidate, early money is critical money. You can get some flyers made, you can make a couple of signs, you can get your website up and running. And the reason we had early money to give to these candidates was because of all of you who come to these luncheons and you donate your lunch money. And some of you have, quite frankly, been very generous with your lunch money, and we appreciate it. You come to our fundraisers, it's because of you. This is that collective action that lets us get that money and get that into the hands of the candidates right off the bat. Not only did we donate money, these are all the candidates we endorsed. Oh, here's the good news. Of all the candidates we endorsed, 62% were women. Of all the candidates who won, 67% were women. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We didn't just donate money. We turned around and mobilized hundreds. Dr. Davis mobilized hundreds of members and friends of the Women's Democratic Club. And we were out there. We did postcards. We did letters. I think we touched about 10,000 pieces of mail altogether when we counted all up. All of you, you came out, you knocked on doors, you put signs in your yard, you endorsed candidates on social media. We ended up with about 30 people down to campaign for Davina Smith. Oh, you know, Davina has not yet won, but I'll tell you what, Davina felt supported. And if we go back and we ask Davina, would you run again? I can promise you that the Women's Democratic Club will be there to support her run. And all of our incredible candidates, we had incredible candidates this last round. We'll be there. Okay. Oh, one more here. Here's the best news. Guess what we've got coming up? The municipal elections. This is where we build our bench. This is where we get Democrats elected to city and county positions. This is where we can really have some influence. So we're going to talk a lot about municipals, not today, but it's going to be on our radar. All right, the next thing we were supposed to do was provide a forum for vigorous discussion. That's what we're going to do here today. After we're finished honoring the amazing, incredible Sherrie, we're going to turn the mic over to Senator Escamillo and Representative Romero. We're going to talk about upcoming legislation. There are some good bills coming our way, but there are some really bad bills coming our way. And this, again, this is collective action. We all need to know about this, and we all need to be out there advocating. So we're glad you're here for our vigorous forum. You don't have to be a member to ever come to one of our meetings. You're all welcome. Men, women, cat lovers, dog lovers, teenagers, everybody. All right. The next thing we're supposed to do is advocate for open, balanced, and accountable government. We had such a good year here. Under the leadership of Dr. Ellen Brady, 17 members of the Women's Democratic Club were published in 26 different op-eds or letters to the editor. We had 21 in the Salt Lake Tribune alone, 2 in the Deseret News, 2 in the Standard Examiner, 1 in the Park Record, and 1 in Utah Policy. And in addition to all of this advocacy work, Dr. Brady has authored many statements from the Women's Democratic Club on the rights of transgender women, on the continuing gun violence after Baltimore and Uvalde, and sadly, again, after the Q murders in Colorado. Dr. Brady has been our voice, and we owe a debt of gratitude to her. And if any of you have got something you're passionate about and you want some help writing it up, we've got the A-team right here. We'll get it published. We'll get it out there. We'll help you write it. We'll get it published. So keep that in mind. And next Wednesday between 7 and 8, free on Zoom, Dr. Brady's going to lead a course, a fun course. I mean, it's going to be fun. On how to advocate. You know, some of us just don't know. I mean, I want to do something, but do I have to go up to the Capitol and tackle somebody? I don't know. So next Wednesday, the information will be on our website. Sign up. It'll be good. She does a great job at this. Okay, and the last thing on our list was to work for equal rights and equal opportunity for all. As many of you know, the Women's Democratic Club was a founding member of the Utah ERA Coalition. And we have worked with that coalition over the last 6 or 7 years to try to get the Utah legislature to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. Now, don't you just find it breathtaking that we're one of like 5 states that have not yet ratified the Equal Rights Amendment? This next year, the Utah ERA Coalition is going to come under the wing of the Women's Democratic Club so that we can continue our efforts to get the Equal Rights Amendment ratified, to get it in the Constitution nationally, and fight and work for equal rights for everybody. Yeah. One upcoming event that you're going to want to get on your calendar is this June is the 100th anniversary of the birth of the Equal Rights Amendment. And we can't call it a celebration because we haven't gotten it into the Constitution yet, but we are going to honor the fact that this Equal Rights Amendment is 100 years old, and we're going to be doing a pretty fancy fundraiser on that. So I just want to let everybody know, put that on your calendar. Let's show up for women's rights. Okay, perfect. All right. Now, it is my great pleasure to bring up Lanny Chapman, who's going to introduce the Women's Democratic Club Woman of the Year. And Lanny, as soon as you are finished with your introduction, you can just push that little button. Press play. Okay.
Thank you all. Good afternoon. My name is Lanny Chapman, and I can't say I'm running for Salt Lake County Clerk anymore because I am the Salt Lake County Clerk. We did it. We did it. And it's because of all of our hard work. It honestly is. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I am honored to introduce my role model and one of my dearest friends and a trailblazer, Sherrie Swensen. To say that Sherrie's impact on Salt Lake County and the state of Utah is inevitable could be an understatement. Beginning in 1991, Sherrie, as the Salt Lake County clerk, ensured we had access the voter registration forms. She spent countless hours at high schools, at boat shows, at RV shows, autoramas, anywhere she could get those voter registration forms, she was there with a smile on her face, wanting to make sure that we all had an opportunity to have our voices heard in our community. She worked tirelessly to make sure that voting was accessible, convenient, safe, and eligible for all registered voters, from ensuring implementation of the no excuse absentee ballots to offering contracts to municipalities and trailblazing that throughout the state so that during the odd numbered years, our voters had consistency They knew where to vote, how to vote, and what a ballot would look like. And to today, where we have our amazing, incredible, stupendous vote by mail system. That is thanks to Sherrie Swensen. Because of Sherrie, voter participation, not just in Salt Lake County, but in the state of Utah, has increased tremendously. And her amazingness does not end there. It's like, but wait, there's more. As soon as the Court of Appeals ruled on marriage equality case, even before the ruling could be stayed, she made sure that all couples that wanted to get married had an opportunity not only to obtain a marriage license, but to get married at the government center. She made sure that the doors were open early and they stayed open until every single couple who was eligible to get married had access to it. Thank you, Sherrie. Sherrie truly believes and operates every day under the premise that public offices belong in the hands of public servants, and public servants that want to serve all residents, not just an elite few. I could go on and on about my dear friend, but without further ado, please let me introduce my dear friend, my role model, the longest serving woman in Utah, Miss Sherrie Swensen. Pause it. Oh, did we lose it? Nope, it's there. You want me to start it?
Yeah. That's not. No, this is one. Oh, no, it's what? Turn this off. Hold that just a second. Let me stop the share. Okay, now these are all our Zoomies.
Oh,
So we got
great.
Roomies and Zoomies.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Oh, my word, I don't know where they found some of these photos. Talk about taking it back a long time. I am so honored. I can't even tell you how appreciative I am of this award. And I have been so privileged to have been able to be nominated as a Democrat and run for county clerk 8 times. Oh, my word. And serve 32 years. I would have never imagined that. The first time they asked me to run, I was sitting over at the Democratic headquarters where I worked for the Democratic State Party for 5 years. And I got a phone call, and it was from some of the elected officials and their assistants, and they asked me to be a candidate. And I said, oh no, I don't want to run for office. And they said, well, why don't you think about it and let us know? And I said, we'll find someone else. And and then, of course, I don't think they looked for anyone else, quite honestly. And I ended up running, and I said, well, if I'm going to run, I want to really run hard and try to win. So that's how it all began in 1990. And it was quite a time when actually the Democrats did really well that year. I didn't win on my own accord. There was a third party candidate with the independent party. And I believe that really helped put me in. Plus, we elected a lot of Democrats that year, and I was fortunate enough to win. And when I got into office, now imagine there was no internet. No one could get online and register to vote. And I felt like the voter registration was a well-kept secret. So, and intentionally so, I must say. So the voter registration mail-in forms were under the post office counter at the main post office, and no one knew where to find them or how to get registered to vote. They would not, when I was working for the party, even give forms to candidates to go door to door at the clerk's office. It was just incredible. The candidates couldn't even get a hold of the voter registration forms. And I thought, this has got to change. So we developed a countertop display box, put forms in 300 locations throughout Salt Lake County, and people could walk in and see a voter registration form in grocery stores, laundromats, clubhouses of apartment buildings, at the post offices, libraries, and be reminded, oh, I can register to vote and mail in a voter registration form. That made a huge difference just going into the 1992 election. And it was kind of interesting because one of the things I heard was that the Republicans were worried that I was registering so many people to vote. And so from then on, it was outreach. I had an old motor home, and we dubbed it the Clerk Mobile, and I was going out to parking lots and registering people. I had some of the DJs from the radios come out with me and broadcast from the Clerk Mobile. And it was so funny because we would have calls from other counties asking when the Clerk Mobile was coming to their county. But it was great. And as Lanny said, we were going to, high school, senior centers, autoramas, boat shows, home shows. And by the way, Rochelle Hobbs, she worked for me for 19 years, and she was there with me. And we spent a lot of Friday nights and weekends going to these different events and registering people to vote. And that alone, just having people be offered the chance to register to vote. And then when we could offer a permanent absentee program, I did that. We implemented a permanent absentee program, and the state law said that the county clerk could offer a permanent absentee program, but the other counties weren't offering that. People could sign up and opt in to vote by mail. And I remember going to like the Senior Expo, and I would have people at the Senior Expo say, I wish our clerk would offer a permanent absentee program, but there we were, and offering a permanent absentee program. And by 2012, we had a fourth of the voters in Salt Lake County on permanent absentee, so we could automatically mail them a ballot. And so with that, they saw, especially the Republican Party chair, saw the difference in the turnout of those who were voting permanent absentee. And that's where it became presented to the legislature that they should make it available to have people conduct elections by vote by mail. So the law changed in 2013, so county clerks could conduct elections with vote by mail. And I remember going to that first legislative meeting where Representative Ellison was proposing that. And all the other county clerks were grumbling about it and like, no, we don't want this. And I'm like, no, I was there supporting him because we were already doing a lot of it. And it passed. And then the county clerks could offer the opportunity to conduct elections by mail and automatically mail every active registered voter a ballot without them having to apply for it. So that was a huge change. And since we've done that, the turnout has skyrocketed. November 2020 in Salt Lake County, the turnout was 90.11%. And that was of a record number of registered voters. There were 100,000 additional registered voters between 2016 and 2020, and then a 90.11% turnout. And in spite of all of the rhetoric of some saying not to trust vote by mail, at that point in time, 89% of the voters who voted in that presidential election in 2020 voted by mail. So, and now with the last election, it was even greater than that. So people don't believe the nonsense and do not mistrust our vote by mail system. And it has been a huge change. And that, along with our generic vote centers where someone can go to any vote center in the county, early voting, and by the way, also same-day registration, which Representative Rebecca Chavez-Howe worked so hard to get that passed, and it took a number of years to get that through. So I really believe that we have the best voting system in the country, if not the world, with all the various opportunities. The work wasn't done by me alone. I can tell you that I had amazing staff members and also a lot of dedicated poll workers that work long hours tirelessly, and they have been incredible. They're so dedicated. And when I hear things that they're like allegations that they're doing something nefarious or illegal, it just breaks my heart because I know better. We all work very hard to do everything right and make sure that the elections are fair and accurate. And I know now, thank goodness, that Lanny Chapman has been elected clerk because all of the hard work that has been put into these changes will be carried on by Lanny. She's worked with me for nearly 4 years, and she worked alongside me and again worked tirelessly to help keep things going. And I would have been absolutely devastated had she not been elected. I could not have gone into retirement happy, but now I can. And I'm so proud of her for stepping up and how hard she worked. And thank you for supporting her. And I think people realize how valuable that office is. So I'm gratified by that. But I want to talk just a moment about the day that order came down from Judge Shelby on December 20th. Of 2013. And it was one of the most amazing days ever. When we got the order from Judge Shelby and the ban on same-sex marriage was overturned, people started dashing to the government center to get their licenses. There were marriage ceremonies being performed out in the hallway, all over in the atrium, and people were afraid that there was going to be a stay. And so they were in a hurry to get their marriage licenses. And then when we did close that evening, after staying open late, on Sunday night, I was watching the news and I saw that people were lining up in the cold outside at the government center to wait in line to get their marriage license that Monday. And it just broke my heart. I thought, oh no, they're standing outside in the cold waiting for Monday morning. So we got a hold of the security people and they opened the building early. And then people came in and they lined the hallways of the south building on every floor, 4 floors they were lined. clear to the top, and they waited patiently and respectfully. And as each person or couple, I should say, would come in, get a marriage license, as they would exit the other door, a cheer would go up from the people outside waiting. There were people that brought pizza and refreshments to those waiting in line, and it was just amazing. And I was worried that we weren't going to be able to get through those lines. And by the way, I had staff members that were on vacation and canceled family plans. It was close to Christmas, and they volunteered to come back and help us because they were so excited about being able to offer that opportunity. And I would look out the door and I'd think, oh my goodness, the line's getting shorter. And I would ask people how long they'd been waiting. And finally they would say, oh, I've only been waiting 45 minutes. And I thought, we're actually going to make it. We're going to make it. And we were able to issue a marriage license on that Monday to everyone who was in line. And the stay didn't come until a week later. And one of the other wonderful things that I want to mention about that is we were doing marriage ceremonies in my office and had been for years, but all of my staff were given the opportunity to continue to do marriage ceremonies if they had no problem with doing marriage ceremonies for same-sex couples. And not one of them said they didn't want to continue. And I am so proud of that. What an amazing group of coworkers I've had. And I just want to again say thank you for this honor. And I feel like it honors all of those that have worked with me. So thank you. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Well done. Well done. Thank you. Thank you. Break your foot.
Oh, that was fun, wasn't it? Hang on, I think I'm sharing my screen. Am I sharing my screen, Mitch? Yep. Okay. I'm gonna, sorry. Oh, I want to go back to the screen. While we've got just a pause here, I wanted to recognize Angel Weiss. She's finally here. There's Angel over there. The videos that you saw today, those were produced by Angel. So give her a special hand for those. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to turn the time over to Lisa, our program director. She's going to tell you about some upcoming events. We're going to introduce our senator and representative.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you all for being here. What a wonderful turnout. And we had Fox News here for a minute. Congratulations, Sherrie. What an honor. Thank you. I want to invite you all. February 4th is going to be another exciting program. Lauren Gustus, the executive editor of the Salt Lake Tribune, is going to be with us speaking about the importance of local media. And Fraser Nelson, who led the transition of the Tribune to the first nonprofit newspaper in the country, and why that's important, and again, why local media is so critical to civic engagement. So stay tuned. Registration will be up shortly for the next event. And now, oh my, you can't see it. People on Zoom can see my head. So another two women doing exciting, tremendous work in Utah. Senate Minority Leader Luz Escamillo and House Minority Leader Angela Romero are with us today. It hardly looks like they need an introduction by that round of applause. I would like to say that Angela Romero is a champion for women and children. She focuses on issues that matter to working families with an emphasis on the diverse ethnicities in her district. Angela fights for survivors of sexual assault. She's led work on clean air and secured funding for the TRAC's Monitoring Air Quality Program and sponsored legislation creating the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women legislation. Senate Minority Luz Escamillo, also the first Latina elected to the Utah State Senate. Senator Escamilla focuses on better schools and educational opportunities and public safety programs for children. Has done a great amount of work in crime victim advocacy, early childhood intervention, and expansion of healthcare for uninsured children. She's a champion of women's reproductive rights and is committed to social justice. So today we have them both here to tell us what we can look forward to and hide from in the legislation coming up. So thank you both. Oh, yes, thank you, Robin. On your table, there are some note cards and pens. If you have questions, please write them down. We'll collect them and then we will bring the questions up in a Q&A session after our speakers talk for a little bit.
No.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's already afternoon, right? Yay, okay. I just want to take a minute first to say Sherrie is not only a trailblazer for women in politics, but also in fashion. So she brought fashion to elected officials and politics. So thank you for your legacy. And it's an honor to be able to be here in this celebration. And I'm sure there are more to come. So congratulations and to your family for allowing us to have you for so many years working, because it's a true dedication of a family affair and it takes more than just that person. So congratulations again. Also at the same time as we're here, I'm celebrating, of course, Sherrie's legacy. You know, it's been a difficult couple of weeks for the Senate Democrats, as you all are aware. Senator Karen Main resigned after, 15 years in the state legislature. It's a little bit emotional for me, so I've been restraining myself of not saying a lot. We've been in this journey together this will be my 15th session. So we came in, she came in a couple of months before after Eddie passed away, and we've been together all this time. You do get to create a really interesting relationship with your colleagues. Agree to disagree on many issues, but they become part of your family. It's an ongoing piece. And certainly Representative Romero, Minority Leader Romero, and myself, we've been friends before that. We went to school together, but with Senator Main is more than just a friend or a colleague, it's a mentor. And we are all certainly sending prayers and good vibes her way so she can recover. And in a way, I'm a little bit selfish. I wanted her next to me through this journey, but I know she needs to be with her family. And it's just, there will be, I think, a lot of time to also recognize her amazing work. But just so you are aware, as I say this, we're entering the Senate Democrats, which is a very small group of 6. We're starting a caucus with 80% new members. So I see this obviously as a great opportunity. We have amazing people in the Senate Dems, and we're waiting for one more that will be announced on Monday night. So they're starting Tuesday sharp at 7 a.m. because we have to deal with some stuff prior to the opening ceremony. And as Democrats, this is certainly a big change, but I will ask all of you to think about all of us collectively as a team. We are a team, and that's part of why we're here standing up together as the 2 new leaders of the Senate Democrats and House Democrats, because we believe in team effort. And we are small in terms of numbers, but we're mighty, and we are here to make a difference. And you will hear us be very strategic, I will say that first, very strategic, because at the end of the day, I think all of you expect good public policy from this legislative process. There's a lot of politics, but there's a lot of policy, which is what we need to focus in the next 45 days. So we are going to rely heavily on all of you doing some of the push that needs to happen through the public with the community while we're just focusing on that policy, because it's in some wording that could totally make a big difference and unintended consequences come our way. So I just wanted to open, this opening remarks and say how it's so very exciting to be here. I mean, without this group as a woman of color, I needed a lot of your support, and many of you guys have been there since 2008, when it's my first time I run for office, and I appreciate that support. So that's the time to represent them.
And as Senator Escamillo pointed out, we've been friends since college. And so we have been organizing together since college. And I think this is a plus for our caucus because we know each other so well, we work with each other so well, that you're going to see the Senate Democrats and the House Democrats work together like you've never seen them do before. We might be smaller now, but that doesn't mean we're not going to get things done. So as Senator Escamillo pointed out, and they pointed out, she was the first Latina, and I think the youngest person ever elected to the Senate, but also something very important, and especially during these times, she was the first immigrant ever elected to the Senate. So I think that's also important to mention. We did make history, and I think this is important to highlight as well. We have an all-female leadership team in both the Senate and the House. And both our staff directors are women. And so there's a lot of firsts, and we're the first two women of color ever to be elected as leaders of our House. So I just came back from Planned Parenthood. They're doing a training today, and I was talking about reproductive rights and just wanted to point out to people that as we look at these intersectionalities, as we look at all of these bills, they all tie in together. And Senator Escamillo ran legislation last year called the socials to get community health workers, and their whole focus is on the social determinants of health. And so when we run legislation and we look at policy, we both have MPAs too. She got hers before I did, but we both are masters in public administration from the University, and she was pregnant when she did this. So I can't say enough, because I wouldn't be who I am today without the mentorship of Senator Escamillo and former Representative Jennifer Seelig and former Representative Rebecca Chavez-Houck, and Representative Moss is here, and many, many others. And Josie, I mean, who cannot live without Josie? You need Josie. So there are a lot of challenges that are going to come our way. And we're going to see it. And so that's why we didn't want to take a lot of time to talk. And we wanted to do some Q&A with you, and also rely on the expertise of some of our colleagues here in the room with us, because again, we are looking at this legislative session as a team. We're not there to be friends. We're there to be a team, and we're there to represent your voice, and we're there to take care of business, and we're going to need you. So you're part of our team. We're like, we're leading the team, but we need all of you to be there with us. And so there are many, many issues coming our way when it comes to abortion, when it comes to education, when it comes to healthcare access, when it comes to just protecting our basic fundamental rights, but more importantly, our families, our transgender youth. I mean, there are just so many things that are coming our way, and we're going to need your support. We're going to need your voices. We're going to need to speak out, because it's going to be a rough session. And the Senate doesn't change much, but the House, we have 15 new members coming in. Only one of those are Democrat. And so it's a whole new batch of people. And we just found out, like, one of them filed a bill to overturn in-state tuition for students that are undocumented. So there's going to be a lot of crazy town coming our way. And so we're going to need all of your help to help us. But we want to do a Q&A and talk with you and have a conversation versus us just being up here talking to you. So we're ready.
Yeah, that's the first there. Yes, please. So and I'm gonna try to mix this also with the trans youth situation. We are making a big plea to just pause, right, and give a kind of like a year of the pause, like on this stuff, part of it is because there's a lot of stuff that is still in the judicial hands. And so, our kind of like our framework right now is, do we really need this? It's been very hurtful. We're still hurting. We're trying to figure out how this is going to look, after Supreme Court decisions and cases and all states and other places. So that's how we're starting our conversation with leadership team and saying, look, is this really necessary? There's been enough hurt and enough damage, and it's been painful. Can we just pause? I don't know how successful we're going to be on that, but just know we're attempting that, not because we don't care about fixing the policy issue, but we also know how to count, right? So you guys know the number game: 38 in the House, 15 in the Senate, and the governor's signature. Please, everything you guys do as you're thinking and framing issues, that as you're working on legislative issues, please remember those numbers. Because if we know when we're like, we're not going to get to that number, then we have to then think of a different strategy to diminish the impact. A lot of what we do is diminish impact. And this is the incrementalism behind all our practitioners of public policy, right? It is what it is. You are in an incremental world, and it's very incremental. So I know people get frustrated, and I don't blame you. I've cried many, many times. I've cried on the floor when they killed my covering all kids bill. I mean, like, we have all this surplus and we can't cover children. What does that say about us as humans? But so I'll say this. So with that, there are a couple of bills that we need to keep in mind. One is very interesting, is Representative Brummer, and I think it's HJR 2, and it's, man, they're trying. I'm sure they have thousands of people working on how to be more evil. But one of the things that he's trying to do, which is, it caught us off guard because it may have consequences in a lot of other cases, is actually so it's not moving forward. He wants to go back into cases and remove a piece that we have in our judicial piece. It's very technical, but basically will actually stop the case, the court case that we have of injunction case. But it will affect every other cases. So the courts are going crazy. We don't even have a way of knowing how many cases could be potentially impacted. So it's those little things that they're trying to do. That doesn't say abortion on the bill that will have a really direct impact, because we have that trigger bill, and we were able to, PPAC, thanks to them filing and doing all that advocacy they need to do, Planned Parenthood, they were able to put that injunction. Now he's trying to reverse that injunction, but at the same time, so go back, which just there, we're trying to see the constitutionality behind that.
So I asked our ledge counsel about the constitutionality of this. There is no case law to go off of for this particular bill, but there does pose a question. Does this really infringe on the powers of the courts? And how does it impact the three branches of government? So that question is out there. And so there is no case law, not necessarily a violation of the Constitution, but it does bring into question how does this impact other branches of government with this particular bill? You have to all remember, Brady Brammer is very conservative. Brady Brammer is a lawyer. He belongs to a lot of these fringe groups, as I would call them, like ALEC and all these other groups. And so think about, he has all these other people behind him working on that. When we saw that letter go out from Representative Lisenby and Representative Birkeland about people violating the law, he was the brains behind that too. So don't underestimate this guy. He is very strategic and he knows what he's doing, but we can be just as strategic, and we have to push back because we can't allow them to take the voice away from our courts or our executive branch. Every year in the legislature, I see some bill come where it takes away from municipalities, or it takes away from the executive branch, or they try to take away from the judiciary. This is not, Brady Brammer's kingdom. This is like Utah, and we have three branches of government for a reason. And so I will ask the next question for Senator Escamillo, because this is her area of expertise. What health-related bills can we support and ones we oppose? And I'm blind and I don't have my reading glasses, but I see the last name. I think it's June Taylor. I hope I got it. It's June. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So a couple of things, some really good healthcare bills coming our way. And so I've seen a trend. It's like a beautiful trend the last 10 years a lot of the stuff we've been talking as Democrats for a decade now is cool and is exciting and sexy. So now they're running a lot of those bills. So I see some of my colleagues here that know like our bills now are being run by other people, Republicans. And sometimes it takes, unfortunately, a Republican to run some of these bills. The governor's budget, by the way, which is a nice attempt, like he puts his wish list and we're like, oh, that's cute. But he actually does, because, you know, we make that decision, but it actually does give some parameters in terms of some policy that he probably already talked to his friends in the, you know, the Republican side. And so if you watch that budget from that perspective, not on the amounts, it actually tells you a little bit about where they're going to be some of those bills coming. So one thing is, you know, Representative Lesser, which is wonderful, of course, has been running this legislation to expand that Medicaid coverage for, you know, postpartum Medicaid coverage to 12 months. And, you know, they've been rejecting this bill. It's now we look awful. I think we're one of the few states that only covers 30 days or 60 days for women. That's brutal. We're seeing many women losing their lives to postpartum depression. And, you know, we are the state that wants, you know, families and women care about pregnancies and kids, and we don't even cover them. So I think, I know Representative Lesser is running the bill. We're all behind this. I wouldn't be surprised if someone comes from the other side and now they have the solution, but just know, we will obviously have to see this pass. But sometimes that's what it takes, right? I mean, I've seen that little strategy happening before. It has happened to me on some of my bills. I will run again the covering all kids bill. This needs to happen. We can't do anything on education or anything else if we don't give them coverage. These kids are medically needing care, and preventive care is actually more affordable at the end, and the return investment is very high. We are paying on uncompensated care, we all collectively, because it actually has a burden on our, you know, our premiums in our insurance, whether you're in the private sector or not insurance, or we all pay for that uncompensated care. So 13 million alone uncompensated care at Primary Children's Hospital, 8 million in the counties alone also of uncompensated care. Many of that is mental health that our kids are now needing desperately. So that bill is my number one priority bill. We need support. We need to people say this is not a joke. We should be covering kiddos. So that bill is super important, very important. I'm also doing, this is really unique, and running a doulas bill. Do you guys know what doulas are? When I'm in a group with men, they're like, what is that? Is that French? And I'm like, no, that's not French. Maybe it's French. I should know. I speak French. So doulas are, so again, part of this postpartum care and maternal health, which is so important because we rank horribly internationally. I mean, we're one of the worst, you know, when it comes to women's health as a whole, including this postpartum care. Doulas are in a unique place to be very supportive of women, and especially just more high risk women during their pregnancy, so low income, working poor families with and women of color. So these doulas play a role of education, support, and a lot of, you know, just a lot of education and empowering them to make sure they're navigating healthcare, including postpartum depression. So watch for the doulas bill. It's the doulas year, the year of the doulas, yes. We don't have bill numbers yet. They're being drafted. It's probably going to take a while. Sorry. I mean, and I wouldn't even, yeah, that's HAR 2. Some of them have been numbered. It depends on the style of the legislator. Remember, there's 1,000 requests, but they're coming. I do not release any of my bills until I'm like 99% comfortable with the language, by the way. Some bills throw things, some people release them right away. I don't make them public, but it should be public pretty soon. Doulas, yeah, some are. So yeah, Representative Lesser is because it's the same from last year. Just one last thing exciting, if you're especially in the county, I'm working on a fiscal request to fund the very, very first high school comprehensive clinic in a high school. It's going to be in West High. It's amazing. We don't have any of those in the state. It's a best practice across the country. Imagine, so it's Primary Children's and University of Utah coming with all the resources. Their med schools students are going to be doing training there, training on how to care for youth. And it's going to have a comprehensive piece on mental health and behavioral health. Nothing else like that exists, actually. So it's like your Primary Children's, but now at West High. So I'm just excited. So we need support on that and talking about those best practices. You want me to read this one, Dad? You can answer. Yeah, so the other one is, and we can get into this, teachers' pay that are being tied to the vouchers. Representative Romero and myself have been in a lot of panels with the speaker and the president, and this has come up. So, and you got, actually, that bill has been released, right? So it's Representative Perushi's bill. So one is we're gonna have to separate that. And look, we'll take the battle on the voucher. There's no way they can tie that to the pay salary. I mean, this is taking hostage of our teachers and it's so offensive. So we're saying first, separate. This is two different policy conversations. They should not be attached, and that's disgusting that that's happening. So we're starting with that ask. So I'll be very concrete. This was a little bit, it was an educational piece for me. I was part of that voucher initiative. Remember when we were fighting against horrible things like that? I was helping with the Spanish media campaign as a volunteer, making sure our community, our Latinx community, was educated on what they were trying to do to our children, using kids of color in their, little, marketing tools. It was just horrible the way they were, utilizing. And now they're doing it again, because now they're sending all these flyers and it's all kids of color. But here's what I think was interesting. There was apparently a study, a survey done, and it was done by Dan Jones and Associate, whatever the company's now name. It's like there may have been a change in the name of the company. So they're relying on this survey that was sent maybe a couple of months, maybe mid-year of 2022.
And we have to think we're recovering from COVID.
Yeah, right. Recovering for COVID. And now, yes, so there's still a lot of, frustration from parents to our public education system, even though it wasn't their fault that we were all in the midst of, fixing something so chaotic as a pandemic. And the question was, they frame 8 questions. So now they're using that 60% of parents in Utah support vouchers and support private education. And so we need to be careful, because now that's what they're using. Their talking points are on cue, by the way. They will not, there. So it was interesting to hear, like, now they're repeating it. So now I can actually say their speech as well. But it was just, they're quoting that specific survey. And then they're saying, all these families will benefit and it will help our kids on more need, which is where I'll let Representative Romero give the answer she gave on the Salt Lake Chamber, which was priceless. I'll let her do it.
I like to drop little nuggets from time to time, but yes, that bill has been released. We're going to be looking at it now, and I'm going to rely heavily on Representative Moss, who's here in the educator, and Representative Kwan, because they're going to be on that education committee. So I just want you all to know, like, we're a team, and part of being a team is allowing some of our other members who have the expertise to be the experts to represent our voice. And so we're going to rely heavily on Representative Moss and Representative Kwan, who serve on Education Committee, to help us lead those efforts. But what I reminded my colleagues when we're talking about vouchers, and a lot of people don't even know the difference between a public school and a charter school, because charter schools are public. But what I reminded them is that just because you say you support vouchers doesn't mean that you're going to get to the school that you want to, because a lot of the times when we're doing vouchers, you have to be, your name has to be drawn, or the school can select you. And then when you're using brown kids, because that's what they're doing, they're using kids of color on their flyers, and they're using them as talking points, and they're getting kids from Catholic schools and families, manipulating families, from my perspective, that are sending their kids to Catholic school to say this is what we want. But we don't talk about the unintentional consequences of someone not being selected to go to the school that they choose to go to, because the school selects you. You don't select the school necessarily. They don't talk about transportation issues. They don't talk about how this is going to impact the communities that they're trying to help. And so we're going to do some deep dives with our attorneys and get some of these questions answered, because we know what we're looking at now. And so we're going to definitely do that. But for me, I just pointed out, like, what about we talk about small classroom sizes? Why don't we talk about the teacher raise without talking about vouchers? Why don't we talk about full day kindergarten? Why don't we talk about stuff that Senator Escamillo is trying to do to address some of these issues that we're facing right now? And they're using Salt Lake City School District as their scapegoat, but we're not talking about Davis School District and all the racist things that are still happening to kids of color out there. So again, we are going to challenge our colleagues, not by attacking them as people, but talking about the policy and how the policy impacts all of us. And I think that's the difference you're going to see with mine and Senator Escamilla's leadership. We both have MPAs. We understand policy, and we're going to focus on that policy because it's easy to drop bombs and say something about someone or attack them, but it's a lot harder to talk about the policy piece and talk about how it impacts us as a whole in community. So that's what we're going to do when we're talking about this voucher bill. It's a bad bill. We stand united as caucuses. We're speaking ahead before talking to our caucus members. But if you support vouchers, I don't know if you belong in my caucus. So so we're going to stand together, and we're going to be a united force and a voice for all of you and all of the people that are supposedly in support of vouchers. Because I think when people understand vouchers, they're like, okay, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I forgot my reading glasses. This is what happens when you turn 49. Well, it happened when I turned 44, but.
So what bills on the docket are most important polling in public for support or opposition? So I think that was really important what Representative Romero just said. We need support on the good stuff as well. Sometimes we do get people really upset about really bad public policy, but then the other great stuff that our colleagues, especially in our caucuses, are running, we feel sometimes very lonely. And here you have like a massive bill that could potentially impact so many people. And you know, they were like, oh yeah, it's great, but no one shows up. No one is proactively calling their legislators. So I would say, so we have the voucher component and the public education. We need to separate those. Make sure you talk to your UEA and your teachers, because I've seen it. Unfortunately, they start putting so much pressure on them, and they end up sometimes supporting because they feel that's their only choice. Teachers need to know that they can be hostage that way. And we need to be outraged that they're doing that to our public educators and our teachers and administrators. So let's have those conversations, because they also need support. So there's multiple bills. One thing that I think we can all support is we are also saying, and we have Senator Reeves, our expert as an educator herself, and she works for Granite School District in our caucus, and she brings a lot of perspective. She knows a lot of these things. And we were having our meeting yesterday, and she said, look, we need to make sure that we also support moving a lot of this funding directly to the teachers, right? We've been increasing, and by the way, the state of Utah has done more on public education, meaning increasing funds, even though we're still, behind in the last 4 years in the middle of a pandemic, and more than any other state. I mean, also credit where credit is. We've been doing this proactively because we've had a great economy. So now let me jump into the economy, because, a lot of people talk about the economy, and there's all this surplus. There is this surplus. It's at one-time money. It's logistically a nightmare. And it sounds weird, like you have all this funds and you're like, oh, thank you. This is me being a long hauler from COVID. So I apologize. This is when people say COVID doesn't have anything, this is me now with this voice. So just be aware that we've had the largest budgets ever. $23 billion last year. We are going to have $28 billion budget this year. And the number one responsibility of the legislature is to balance the budget every year. I'm very passionate about the budget, and I'm a geek about those numbers. So we need to be careful, because, when you make a commitment to anything and it's like, well, just do it for a year. We're going to pilot this for a year. I always caution, because if we take it away from someone, then next year it's very difficult. We need to be ready for a recession. Right now we're living the inflation nightmare, right? So everybody's desperate. So when you hear, they've been saying it's the year of the tax cut. That's like their new thing. And people may say, oh, another $75 may be helpful, because that's what we're talking when you're thinking about middle class, tax cut. We need to be careful. A tax cut doesn't necessarily mean it's the best approach. And we will be talking about that. We've been saying, look, I don't think income tax cuts is where we need to go. Let's cut taxes on sales and food, right? That's what we need to do. So we're coming all in on this, because that's where it impacts. And I was in a KSL interview with the president yesterday, and I'm like, that's where you're going to actually feel it. That's when the people are making decisions between milk and diapers. That's where those $2 are going to make a difference. And for some, maybe totally abstract of a thinking, and I respect and good for you, but there's a lot of families, especially in our districts, that is what's making a difference between milk or eggs, yes, or Social Security, right? Which we've done incremental. The Social Security tax, which they have been talking about because we've done it up to a specific income, we're like moving that income up, which is the appropriate thing to be. We should not be taxing fixed income individuals in their Social Security. What? Yeah, we're very few states that do it. But the idea to stop this was Senator Maine about 5 years ago. And then they picked it up and now it's their thing, right? Because they did it. So it's so interesting. Watch some of this stuff. We can give you guys a lot of those facts, which I find it cute. I'm like, yeah, remember when Senator Maine proposed that and you guys didn't want to pass it? So, some of those pieces are in terms of the economy. Yeah, we have a strong economy, almost the lowest unemployment rate in the nation, but our inflation is killing us because the wages are not there. And when it comes to women, we know we do the worst in the country. Now, the number one reason why women are not participating is childcare, access to affordable, high quality childcare. So Representative Matthews has a bill. I have a fiscal appropriation for a strategic plan that talks about childcare from an industry side. We need to, because 85% of those workers are women of color and they make $11.20 an hour, lower than McDonald's. So right now, so you guys know, people are taking care of babies in those childcares make less than McDonald's or any fast food restaurant, which to me is mind blowing. But it happens to be that 85% of them are women of color. So we are now reframing this conversation and the governor knows where I'm standing on this. So we have strategic planning work and Representative Matthews. So some of those good and bad happening. But, again, tax cuts, we're focusing on tax on sales, tax on food, of course. They are talking about income tax. That's what's coming down. Property tax may be impacted. And we're still looking, that property tax is pretty messy and of course has an impact also on our education, public LAAs specifically, but we're looking to other options and also water. So we need to, water is such an important issue. Guys, we can't live the way we live anymore. Please know that. It doesn't matter what party you belong to, we are gonna have to change the way we live. And I'm sorry. We're the most subsidized state when it comes to water in the country, meaning the government is subsidizing water. So we have never paid the real value of water, being the second driest state in the nation. So we have to shift everything. We, for the first time, put infrastructure funds, and by that I mean like real infrastructure money in the hundreds of millions to our water conservancy districts and just infrastructure, because our infrastructure was almost 60 to 70 years old. So antiquated. A lot of the water we consume is agriculture, right? The agriculture industry. And look, for some of our rural communities, agriculture is everything to them. So this is not us against them. This is how do we help them bring conservancy and true water, intelligent way of consuming water. Yeah. And so what we do is hundreds of millions into technology and innovation. So less water is being consumed and it's working. We started last session. I think all of us supporting that. So water is another one. And then I'll pass the time to Representative, because then of course the Great Salt Lake comes into that conversation.
So we're taking the different approaches on that. And, I will commend the Republicans working with the Democrats, particularly on water conservation and it being a top priority for all of us. But what's missing from the conversation a lot of times is we don't talk about climate change and how that's impacted our water shortage and also the Great Salt Lake. And with that, we don't talk about our energy and how we produce energy, because that plays a huge role as well. We're so dependent on fossil fuels. We even have the saying that we have clean coal. And so when we're talking about the Great Salt Lake and when we're talking about water shortage, we also need to look at what we're depending on for our energy. And so we really need to get with it when we talk about our economy and when we talk about our energy, to look at it from a global perspective. We need to start really diversifying that energy portfolio and moving to cleaner energy. But also part of that is talking about our transmission lines. I've served on public utilities, environment, and technology for 8 years now. And there is a fight about being part of a regional transmission, doing regional transmission lines, because they just don't want to work with Colorado sometimes. Some of my colleagues, not all, some. And so these are conversations that most people don't really think about, but we really need to look at those regional transmission lines, and we really need to talk about clean energy because that contributes to our climate, and it contributes to why the Great Salt Lake is basically going to disappear in 5 years. So I'm glad that my colleagues are working with us when it comes to the water conservation and doing the infrastructure and all of that, but we're still missing a big part of that conversation, which focuses on climate change and our energy consumption and our energy use outside of water.
Affordable housing, I mean, the big elephant in the room, no pun intended. So in the affordable housing, two things. We are, I mean, if you go back on in terms of our investment as a state, it's big, but we need the municipalities to help, guys. They're the ones that are putting those ordinances. They're the ones that are saying that they're, making planning. And look, we'll take accountability as at the state legislature, but why are we not seeing all this anger on those local governments and the way they're deciding on how they're designing those cities, how they're designing and planning their communities? It's a little bit frustrating. They should be demanding on those developers, and they're not doing it. And I'm sorry, and some of them may be cities that are Democrats sitting in those leadership positions. So I expect all of us to, in a cohesive way, go and have this tough conversation. We are not going to be able to do it alone because they have that power. So even if we continue pouring millions of dollars until they don't make affordability part of their policy and how they're planning their cities, it's not going to happen. So, I mean, we can play blaming games here, but it's also up to them. So I will say, let's, and we would put some pressure on them. They don't like it and they push back. And look, there was this gentleman from, it's not Draper, but not a city here in the Valley, and said, well, I want to see what you guys do on Point of the Mountain development, right? Because now that's a political subdivision. I'm all for it. Let's make that be the model, right? I mean, yeah, that's okay. But what are you doing in your city? Because you're like, yeah, you're the NIMBY city, by the way, and they're one of those, right? So I'm like, you guys better make it happen, because then they fight against us, the state legislature telling them how to do it, right? So it's always this delicate piece. So with housing, is not only about how much millions of dollars we keep bringing for tax credits, which we do. I mean, there's millions in tax credits. There's going to be more into tax credits helping developers if they put affordable housing into it. But if their municipalities are not demanding that, I am right now in one of my bills putting also that childcare should be part of that development, because I don't know how many thousands of new apartments we have here. There's no childcare anywhere. So I'm not sure if the city was thinking there's not going to be kids here, right? Or, I mean, I don't know. I'm just, that childcare thing is what kills me. I mean, you guys care about families. Why are you guys not caring about babies, right? I mean, you care about the baby when it's in someone's vagina, but you don't care when it's outside. So I mean, it's one of those things where we need help in articulating the life of a person in a cohesive way through the whole journey. And we are separating silos of topics, and it bothers me. One of my bills is really about talking about the whole child development, from prenatal all the way to 21. And if you have kiddos, I have an 18-year-old, that's a kid, that's not an adult. I'm telling you, and relies 100%, and even my 20-year-old relies 100% on me and lives at home, which takes us to the housing affordability. And what is not about rent, it's also about home ownership. And, the Republicans, I'm hearing their, some of the stuff they're saying, and I think we're all in agreement that we're very worried about the elimination of our middle class. That's it. If you look at internationally and globally, what kills a country is when the middle class disappears. And watch, that's the scariest thing that could happen. That's why the American dream in America is America, because of the middle class. So we need to be very careful that we keep the middle class moving forward, and home ownership is that. So I have to say, Republicans are really pushing some initiatives for more help, financial help for first-time home buyers. I like that. And I want to be very supportive, right? I mean, we need to devil's in the detail, but just the fact that they are talking about home ownership, because many of them are their kids and their grandkids that are still living in their basement. So, and that's like the life of everyone. So it's interesting when it hits home, it's like, okay, now it's a crisis. But just keep that in mind about housing. Obviously unsheltered families and homelessness. We've been working on that, but just know we are putting hundreds of millions into that, but we need to make sure that municipalities help us.
I want to add,
it's really easy for people and municipalities to blame the legislature. It's always like, oh, it's the legislature's fault. Oh, it's the legislature's fault. But look at what your city councils are really doing when it comes to zoning and codes. And we also not have to think about younger families. We also have to think about our aging population and individuals like my grandma. My mom was staying with her before she passed, but there are people that are being pushed out of their homes because they can't afford them anymore. And so these are the things that we have to think about. These are the things that we have to think about as we move forward, is like, how do we make sure that we're taking care of the people who gave us life and who have built our communities, and now they're being pushed out of their homes. And so at a municipal level and on a state level, we need to make sure we have programs to support that. And that's where Social Security plays a huge role. But more importantly, we've been talking about homelessness and people that are in sheltered for a long time. Myself, Senator Escamillo, and Representative Hollins, we did not support Operation Rio Grande. We did not go along to get along. Even when our city said to do it, I said, hell no. And I work for the city. And we're seeing that because we're seeing what's happening to our neighborhoods in particular. It's just pushing people in different directions. And so again, our municipalities need the help from the state, and the state's trying to step up. But I don't know if having people live in sheds is the solution either. And so I think we really need to have these honest conversations when it comes to how do we make sure people can afford to live in a home or in an apartment. And we can't just think about these younger families or people like my son. He pays as much for his rent as I do for my mortgage. But we have to think about people who made our life easier and making sure that they can stay in their homes as well. So I wanted to just really point that out and know that we'll be working on issues of homelessness. But I also want you to hold your cities accountable and really think about, is it always the state's fault, or how does that municipality, that mayor, that council play a role in that as well? Because I get tired of the fingers being pointed at us.
There's a good question. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
real quick, because we have
A question.
questions in the chat.
Oh, man, there's a lot of questions. Yeah. So you guys, we can, okay. So there was a question about our relationship with the Utah PTA. Whoever asked that question, perfect. So they support many of my bills. They are, they're just, their advocacy may be a little bit different because they have so many groups that have to kind of like come up on their policy group. I guess they have a statewide group. They've been very helpful. It's just, sometimes it's the style of people, but yeah, we work very closely, at least at Utah PTA. We have 5 minutes, guys. I'm sorry. It has been helpful. You want to add anything to it?
The only thing I want to talk about is another issue that we never talked about, but that's domestic violence and
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, there's some questions on domestic violence. I'll pass it to the expert on domestic violence, but also if you can address, there was a really beautiful question about what are we doing here, for example, in the state of Utah with everything that's happening globally against women and violence against women, like in Iran and other places. So I'll let her.
Thank you. And we only have 5 minutes, but to address domestic violence and sexual assault, and what we're hearing a lot on the news is domestic violence, just because we've seen a lot of women and families being murdered by their intimate partner. And the lieutenant governor actually had an experience where one of her family members was murdered by her partner. And it was horrible, but I'm sad that happened to her family, but I've been talking about domestic violence and sexual assault since I was elected. So I'm finally happy to see that the executive branch is helping us push that forward to get some more funding. So it's going to go probably through Representative Ivory, and we're going to be talking about domestic violence and sexual assault. Did you know that sexual assault survivors, we spend about $25 on them? That's all. But yet we spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on rehabilitating their perpetrator. And I think that's just a disservice. So when we're talking about domestic violence and sexual assault, we have to know that it's about power and control. But when we're talking about domestic violence, we can't forget about sexual assault, because there's sexual assault, as you know, and this is my passion. We never see anyone held accountable for it because we haven't passed affirmative consent. We don't have strong laws to hold people accountable for that. And so this is something we're working on. We're hoping, I think it's about 54 million will go into victim services. And so I have my fingers crossed, because whenever we talk about these particular issues, it always gets pushed to the back burner. So I'm hoping with the lieutenant governor being that voice, it'll help push this to the front. When it talks about what's happening to people across the country and even in Iran, I was recently at the Washington Post held their Global Women Summit, and I was one of the speakers on one of their panels, which was really cool. I was kind of, this sounds bad, I shouldn't say it. I was kind of like trying to get Hillary Clinton's attention. I was waiting for her to come out of the bathroom. It was pretty bad, but there were some amazing women leaders there that were talking about what's happening to women and others that are just talking about basic freedoms that we feel here in the United States that other women aren't experiencing, are dying, and their families are dying across the world because they want just the basic right to go to school. And so we can't forget about that as elected officials or individuals here in the United States. We need to make sure that we're looking out for our brothers and sisters in other countries, especially women who can't even leave their home without covering themselves because they're supposedly an attempt a man. And so I really want you to know that we here, me in particular, this is an important issue to me. And as the president-elect of the National Hispanic Caucus of State Legislators, we are working on these issues with some of our other colleagues at a national level. We may not be able to do some stuff here at a local level, but we could also do a resolution. And so I think those are something. So if someone wants to come talk to me, Senator Escamillo, after, we can talk about maybe putting a resolution in place, because I think this is an important issue that people need to know that's happening across. It may not be happening here, but it may be happening here. Like we talk about just different issues that we're not even aware of because we talk about human trafficking and all these silos that exist in our own state that we just are not aware about because it's not happening within our social circles, or we don't know someone that's been impacted by it. So on that particular issue, come talk to us and we'll see if we can get a resolution drafted. But just know that we're here for you as your minority leaders. Our caucus members are here for you. We're always here. And we just want you to know that we'll continue to be your voice. And sometimes that means we stand alone. I mean, there's been times where I've been on the House floor and I'm the only no vote. And you know what? I'm okay with that. And Greg Hughes would always look at me. Greg Hughes would always look at me and he's like, he would give me time and he's like look at the board and look at me, and I would just smile at him and I would just wave and I'm like, no. So again, just know that we're all here for you. We need to engage people. We need to give people hope again, because people have lost that hope. And so even though we've had gerrymandering, we've had all these things happen, we need to be the boots on the ground to help people get like Lanny Chapman elected. We need to get Sheriff Rivera elected. And, you know, we did that and we saw that happen, but we also need to do it at a state level. We lost some seats by 100 votes, 200 votes, 67 votes. And so we went from a caucus of 17 in the House to a caucus of 14. And so I'm just asking you now, we need to start organizing now. We need to engage our community members now. We need to give people hope to believe in Democrats, that we are the solution, because we can't keep on going the direction we're going. You see what's happening with HJR2. They're trying to take every power away from other branches of government. I mean, I'm sure that our county clerk will be attacked some way with some form of legislation. We see that our DACA students, their right to an education, they didn't choose to come here, is someone's trying to take it away. So we need to be vigilant about this. We need to keep on fighting. We can't let them win. We can't just give up. And so I'm asking you all to join me and Senator Escamillo, to join Diane over here, to join our county party, and to get people organized, because that's the only way we're going to bring balance to this world and to the state.
Well, that was pretty good, I'd say, wouldn't you? Woo! All right. I've just got a couple of quick announcements. I want to recommend Free Iran Salt Lake City, who came with us to stand up, women, came with us today. Yes. Woo! Thank you. And Niala, do you want to just announce about the march that's coming up? Thank you. I do want to remind everybody that there's going to be an election for Senate District 12. And one of our members, Karen Kwan, is running for that office. So I want to recognize her. Go girls. There are, yes, Diane. Great. Perfect. Thank you, Diane. There are a few remaining meals. So if you did not get a meal, please feel free to have one before you leave. My resolution for 2023 is to be a better citizen. And I hope a whole lot of you can join me in that intention for 2023. Politics is a participatory sport. You've got to show up for it. And we've got enormous opportunities this next year. We've got such quality people representing us. I'm so proud of the work that they do. So let's see if we can't citizen a little better in this next year. All right. As we leave, I'm going to say thank you all for coming. And the Women's Democratic Club had a song this last year. We had a song of the year, and it's MoCab's Put a Woman in Charge. So as we leave today, I'm going to play Put a Woman in Charge. All right. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you.